IMHO 101 Jams. You have Sir Charles.
Miss Max.
Grayson.
And we are still here, as you know. Thank you for joining us. And as always, we try to entertain, but also inform. That's what we do here at IMHO. So remember, 434-422-9101 is how you hit us here at the station, or online, IMHO Talk Show on any social media or online platform that you prefer. And our guest for this segment, he probably is going to want you to call in old-fashioned way by phone, because there are some issues, as you all know, whether we're dealing with our children or with ourselves when it comes to our behavior and our emotional health, when it comes to our attachments to technology. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
All right. Don't act like y'all know what I'm talking about up in here.
No, I do.
but we have Dr. Kushlev with us, a PhD. Formerly was a professor here, a student here, I believe, at UVA. Now is in the Department of Psychology at Georgetown University. And on Kushlev, which is KUSHLEV.com. It states, what makes people happy? What are the consequences of being happy? How can we increase individual and societal well-being? Those are the broad questions that guide my research. My current research program explores how constant connectivity to the internet impacts people's health and well-being, and how we can harness technology to improve health and well-being and promote positive behavioral change. So, Dr. Kushlev, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, I tried my best to give you, a worthwhile introduction, but please, formally introduce yourself and let the folks know, in particular, some of the published work that you have around this, sort of cultural phenomenon.
Yeah. So, as you were saying, I'm really interested in studying the impact of smartphones, and the reason why I focused on smartphones is what they have changed is that now you can basically take the internet with you everywhere you go. So even though you can do kind of many of the similar things on a desktop computer or a laptop, with a smartphone, you can do those things while you are out and about, maybe interacting with friends, maybe with your children, and so forth. And so I've been interested in how the fact that we can now look at our screen anytime we're with other people might actually compromise some of the benefits we might otherwise be getting from those important social interactions.
Now, let's start off with our young people. So, what's your perspective? Like, what have you found to be, maybe the amount of time or the age that we should introduce our young people to smartphones?
Yeah, so the research is in its infancy in this area, and there is certainly a lot of research with children suggesting that these smart devices can actually be very beneficial for learning. But of course, it depends what kind of screen time we're talking about. So if you're just now playing even more, shows on a smartphone screen in addition to a TV, and not really interacting with your children while you're doing that, that's actually, the research suggests that that's not really helping learning all that much. But with the smart technologies and artificial intelligence and things like that, you can actually now think of IMHO, for example. So, on a TV screen, you can actually, just watch what IMHO is doing. But with a smartphone, you might start potentially interacting with IMHO. So you have to, press the right answer or something like that before you can continue. So it becomes this back and forth interaction, which can actually be very beneficial for learning. So there's there's no sort of black and white answer. Is there an age in which you should be introducing? It's really all about how we are using these devices, and my research also suggests when and where we use these devices.
So, hi, Dr. Kushlev, this is Max. Question for you. So, in terms of using these devices to kind of educate our younger children, I have a 4-year-old that actually asked his pediatrician this question because he's kind of hooked to this, the watching cartoons and videos, some learning, not, and some not. But my question is whether or not not, or what's a good time that I should allow him to be on it? I asked the pediatrician that, and she just I don't know if I got an answer that I was happy with. I can't remember it, so I guess not. So I'm just asking you your professional opinion about how much time should we allow our kids on these different devices?
I mean, I'm not going to give you a definitive answer either, but one thing to think about is what are other things that the screen time is replacing, right? And so if it is, a time of the day when, I don't know, there's nothing else to do, and, your child can watch something fun or educational, that might be okay. But, the problem really begins when, children are not actually out playing with their friends, but just sitting at home and watching other children play, which apparently is a big thing on YouTube. You actually watch other people, having fun or playing games or whatever.
That's crazy.
And the other thing I would say in terms of the timing of the day is it's really matters, whether the child is just watching something alone or perhaps with a parent. So, a screen could actually create a common experience. I don't know if you've been all the, things that your child is interested in, but perhaps there is a show or a game or something that you can actually use the screen or the phone to actually create a social interaction, a meaningful social interaction with your children. That's what this is about. Because part of the question is not just, again, how much time we're spending on these devices, but the question is, what else are they taking us away from? And so if, so let's say when you come back home, if your child is on the screen the entire time and you're not really interacting with them, and then maybe you are catching up on Facebook, obviously that's problematic because it doesn't, it prevents you from connecting in a meaningful way with your child on a daily basis.
So you haven't found research that says that screen time itself hurts brain development? Because we hear that a lot too.
I mean, sure, a certain amount of screen time can hurt brain development, but again, the issue is why that is the case, and part of it might not be a direct effect, meaning that it somehow the screen just hurts the brain development. Point is, we have 24 hours in a day, and so if you're spending time on your screen, and if you're spending 6 hours of your day on the screen, then you're not doing all these other things that could help brain development. So it's sort of replacement type of effect.
Dr. Kushlev, how you doing this, Razor?
Good.
Now, I noticed that we're talking about the cell phones, but what about like Xbox 360s and PlayStation 4s? Because the majority of children that I know, once they finish doing whatever chores are required from the parent, they go into the room and they play Fortnite and they play all these games, and you never see them. And then I noticed that when you see the children walking like in the mall or in stores, people don't interact with each other. People don't say hi to each other. It was a problem in the African American community where black men don't speak to black men that they don't know for whatever reason. But don't you think that these game systems are doing the same things that we're talking about cell phones do?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And in terms of replacing other social time, but I think there is, with video games, there's different kinds, right? So yes, if a child is playing alone in his room, on her or her room, then yeah, that's replacing social interactions. But, a video game on a, TV screen could create a common experience with a friend, which, still doesn't isn't quite the same as actively exercising outside and playing and running. There's problems with just sitting and doing this, but in terms of the social interaction, it could be a meaningful social experience. In addition, there are people could play with friends that might not be co-present. There's guilds and whatnot
Do you play?
that people can join, and so pardon me.
Do you play? Do you play video games?
I don't play, but I do have a friend, not a child, but a friend who was really into the world of Warcraft, and some of the stories that she told. She actually was invited to a wedding of one of the person in her guilds, I think they're called, where she had never met these people, but they communicate all the time, and they schedule times to meet. So I think the broader point here is that these technologies can create these common communities that would have not otherwise existed. I mean, I think it was this week or last week when Facebook actually had a massive outage throughout the world, and so one of the effects of this was that people organizing events and connecting, they were just like, what do we do? Like, there's no way to communicate with each other, which I think really underscores the many ways in which these technologies do actually create opportunities for positive social interactions, opportunities to actually connect with others, not just online, but in the real world.
You don't think that's dependency?
Pardon me?
You don't think it's creating dependency?
Oh, I think it's definitely creating dependency, and it's creating addiction too, in the sense that these technologies are designed to appeal to very pre-programmed motives in our brains, such as the fact that we like it and it feels good when others like what we do.
Yeah.
So when we post something on social media, it feels good to go and check maybe 5 minutes later to see how many people have liked our post. And so this kind of stuff definitely encourages this constant checking that can actually take us away from other things. And, it might feel good for a moment to see how many likes we have, but in the longer term, it might be hurting other meaningful experiences that we might have instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dr. Kushlev, we're going to take a quick break. If you hang on with us, we're going to make that transition because that was a perfect segue into talking more about adults and the way that we are using technology and how that affects our behavior. Okay?
Perfect.
All right, so we will be right back with Dr. Kushlev. He is a behavior and technology psychologist, so that's what he specializes in, and he is here on IMHO. So hit us up during the break if you have any questions or comments, 434-422-9101. Max Charles Razor will be right back with Dr. Kushlev. We are joined by Dr. Kushlev. He is a behavioral and technology specialist when it comes to psychology. So we were Dr. Kushlev here with Charles, Max, and Reza. And remember, 434-422-9101. Hopefully you're enjoying the conversation. This is pretty in-depth, pretty informative. I like when we could do this for you all. Sometimes entertaining, sometimes you just got to sit, listen, and be real with yourself. Because before this segment started, we were actually talking. All three of us are parents, and we were saying, yeah, this is going to be tough. I wonder how many people are actually going to listen and take the advice, of experts such as Dr. Kushlev. But
Charles, there's some people driving right now using their cell phone.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? There's people driving right now using their cell phone. That's the reality.
And Dr. Kushlev, so when I was researching you, I noticed that I couldn't find you on any social media. Is that purposeful? Do you have social media?
Yeah, I do have social media, but I don't use I use my middle name on Facebook, so it's difficult to find. And,
gotcha, okay.
Instagram, has the weird Instagram name.
Yeah. Okay, well, definitely. Before we go, we want to make sure folks know how to reach you if anyone else needs to reach out or book you for anything.
Yeah, so they can find me. My professional social media is on Twitter, so that's at Kushlev PhD.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. So when we left off, we wanted to make the transition from sort of the minors to the adults when it comes to our behavior with technology and the emotional impact that has. So with the young people, I know I had a question. I think Max had one more. As we transition, because this affects both. When it comes to violent images or sexual images, what has your research shown you in that? As far as if you're too young and your brain is developing and it's exposed to such things.
So my research hasn't focused on, that particular question. And so, but to be honest, I don't think, smartphones necessarily have changed that much about that, because you can, with a computer, you can also potentially access those images. And so, there's different parental controls that you can set on devices. And so, certainly, young people, people who haven't had actual sexual experiences might actually form a very different or perverse even view of what lovemaking looks like if they are exposed to these images early on.
Okay. Dr. Kushlev, I have a question for you. I'm wondering whether or not you could talk to us about either the warning signs or indications when our kids start to develop some symptoms of being addicted to their phones or the games that they're playing on their phones. And I don't know if you can answer this one or your research is related to this question, but I wondered if you could maybe elaborate on what tangible effects these different games that our kids have access to on their phones have on their actual actions. For example, some people argue that by playing Fortnite, you're more susceptible to shoot people or shoot at a school or what have you. So I don't know if your research speaks to that, but if you could address those two questions.
Yeah, so I don't study video games, but there is actually quite a lot of research on that question, video games and real-world aggression. So do video games actually cause people to be more aggressive? Essentially, there are two camps. In academia, often you find, two sort of camps of people that basically hate each other and say, no, this is the true answer. And then the other people say, no, this is the other is the true answer. And so yeah, these two camps would tell you, one camp would tell you, yeah, absolutely, we know that playing these active shooter games and first-person shooter games can actually lead to being more aggressive in the real world, and the other camp will tell you that's not true. It's just correlational research. So the big problem with getting a definitive answer here is whether it's the video games that make people actually become more aggressive, or is it that people who are already predisposed to being aggressive, through genetics and other things, can actually be drawn to those sorts of games. So, and the real answer is probably somewhere in the middle. In some cases, maybe it causes that. I mean, I will tell you in my personal experience, I never actually played the first shooter games. They never appealed to me, but my friends growing up did, and none of them were bullies or aggressive or anything like this. So it's not a one-to-one relationship.
And how about warning signs in terms of addiction?
Pardon me?
I had asked whether or not you could give us any warning signs when our kids have essentially become addictive to using their smartphones.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess the clearest, most direct warning sign is how much time they are actually spending on the screen. And, the big companies like Apple and Google now actually provide the tools, right, with screen time on an iPhone, and I think digital well-being on an Android. You can actually monitor the amount of time you or perhaps your child is on screens, whether it's on, you can set it up so that it monitors only the phone screen time or other screen times. Computer and so forth. So I actually just ran a mini study in a class that I'm teaching here with only 11 students at Georgetown, but I was just so surprised to find out, again, using screen time, so objectively measured, most people in most days were spending 6 or more hours on their screen. And I think screen time really measures when you have the screen unlocked and kind of looking at it, right? And so, I mean, that's crazy, right? 6 hours of screen time a day. I mean, that's a third of your waking hours. And most people also reported checking or picking up their phone more than 200 times a day. So this was over a month. Wow. Quite a few days represented there. And so I mean, I would say, in some ways the question is, aren't we all addicted to this? And so, I think a lot of the focus in the media has been on, how is this impacting our children? But, the question that I've been really interested in is, how is it actually impacting us? Because it's often, it's almost a little two-faced to, put all the concerns over on our children, right, and kind of ignore the fact that, adults are also using these devices, a lot of time per day.
Doctor, I got this is something I noticed too. Like I have no scientific stuff to go off of, but I've noticed with our children that if I want to know if they're addicted to it, all I do is remove it from them and then see how they act. So right. I mean, because when you're saying it, once you hit the words of addiction, I compare it to drugs. So it's not like when you said, okay, they're on their hours for 6 hours. It's not like somebody has to do drugs for 6 hours for me to know that they're addicted to it. Like, just do the withdrawal from it and see how they react to it. If they become, like, violent, then if they just, like, they can't focus on anything else, breathing even. Right. I mean, then you have a problem. Like, sometimes I think we overthink things to try to find the answer. Like, it's something as simple as just remove it from them and then watch them. That's going to give you all the data you need. Because you'll have kids that actually start pulling it on you, the person.
That's a really good point. And you say that you don't have any scientific thing to back you, but you actually do. I mean, there's a lot of research that's actually, and when we're talking about addiction, I am talking about, I do mean that these phones and, games and so forth, the technologies are essentially, using the same brain circuits that are involved in addiction in drugs and food and anything else. So the withdrawal idea is really good. And to kind of go back to one of the previous questions about how much time should children spend per day, one idea I had during the break is that part of what you could do is kind of decide on a number of hours, maybe 2 hours of screen time per day, whatever works for the particular situation, and then the child knows that they have 2 hours. So in some ways that could be beneficial for development, because you can kind of think of it as screen time as a type of resource, right? It's the same way you give your children maybe pocket money every day and they know they have that much and they know they can only spend it on a certain amount of things. You can potentially do the same thing with screen time, and it could help teach children to kind of budget their time, self-control, so they know if they just like go on a 2 hour session on YouTube, for 2 hours, then they won't have access to anything else for the rest of the day. So it might help to kind of teach self-control, which really predicts, academic success and other success much more than other things like intelligence and things like that.
But don't you have to offset it with something? Because from what I'm hearing, take it away for 2 hours. Give it to it for 2 hours and then take a break. All they're going to do is just sit there and wait for their time to come back up. You're not offsetting it. You don't have any balance there. Unless I heard you wrong.
Oh, I meant more like, 2 hours per day. Maybe it's 4 hours per day. I don't know. But I'm just saying.
No,
they just
I understand that part.
Oh.
But I'm saying, if you say, okay, you only got 2 hours of the day, and they sit there for 10 hours waiting on that 2 hours, that's not any good. They're still not supplementing it with anything else. Like, don't you think there should be some offset? So if you're going to play a mobile device or a video game, shouldn't you make them play sports, or shouldn't you make them read, or shouldn't it just sounds like I'm not hearing an offset to what you're saying.
Oh, sure, yeah. Absolutely. Part of it is, I guess, maybe that's my own upbringing, but, I could always just, knock on my friend's door and go out and play. So I just was kind of assuming that, a child wouldn't be satisfied with just sitting around for 10 hours.
Yeah, these kids don't really play with nobody no more.
Something else interesting to do. But yeah, absolutely, it is the parents' responsibility to provide opportunities for other fun activities. And, but I think in some ways, we should be careful not to be too paternalistic in this sense. You should try to, as much as possible, get a sense of what the child is interested in, and then think about providing those activities rather than just signing them up for some sport that they might not be interested in playing.
All right, cool. Thank you. So, and definitely before we let you go, we want to touch on the adults as well. Because when you mentioned the screen time, you kind of had me feeling a little self-conscious. I got to be honest, because when I work, a lot of times instead of me being on a computer or whatnot, a lot of my work is via email, things of that sort. So I'm on my phone a lot. So my screen time is through the roof, right? But with, so that makes me think about the adults, right? When it comes to adults. Because I saw how you specialize in how our behavior, how technology is affecting our behavior. So when it comes to the adult and the interaction, like you said earlier, about how even we have adults who will post something online and then wait for somebody to like it or see who's commenting on it. Like, what are the actual, societal effects of that?
Instagram.
What is that doing to us?
Yeah. So the question that I've been interested in again is how the fact that you can now just pull out your phone at dinner or while we're interacting with other people might actually make you pay attention less to these people, maybe kind of send a negative social signal to them. Somebody's talking to you and you're looking down and checking your phone. Who knows what you're missing out, and it's sort of the social norm now. So people, your friend might not think that you're, ignoring him or think that you're a terrible person, but there is something very fundamental about, conversation and actually looking at your conversation partner. So, your friends at dinner might actually decide not to share something that they would have shared otherwise with you because you were checking just even one text during dinner. But the other question is, again, how we're using this technology. And so with social media in particular, and most of the research has been on Facebook, I should clarify here, but there is now pretty clear evidence that there is kind of two general types of use. There is what they call active use and passive use. So passive use is when you're passively scrolling through your feed, liking others' posts maybe, but basically consuming the content that others have produced. And the research is pretty clear that this type of social media use is not good for your well-being. And part of the reason is, especially on Facebook and Instagram, it can create this sense of upward social comparison, which basically means that you're, looking at the friend that's, in the Bahamas, and, people post pictures of these things, and so it can actually make you feel crappy. Now, active use is when you post your own content, but it seems like the thing that really can actually make you feel better after using social media is when you are interacting with other people, especially with close friends and family. So let's say you post something and then maybe somebody comments and then you go and respond to that comment. That's the sort of thing that creates an opportunity for social connection rather than with passive use, which is more about social comparison and about feeling crappy about yourself and your day. And interestingly, there's one more type of use that's actually been shown to be good for well-being, which is to actually look at your own past pictures or feed, but especially pictures. So often we actually look at other people's posts, right? And it might seem like egotistical or something like that to look at your own pictures, but actually, I actually did it right before this interview just to kind of see how it made me feel, and yes, it does feel great. You're just like, oh wow, yes, there's, I was in Hawaii this year. You actually see that you've done all these things, you have all these friends, you had all these happy moments, so it could be like affirming and make you feel good about yourself.
I have a question for you, Dr. Kushlev. So, this may just apply to me, but I don't know. There may be some others out there that can relate. I know in terms of Facebook, there are times when I'm strolling through Facebook where, sometimes it can be like an overload. It's one of those things where I'm kind of like, at times, I can't read one more political thing. I can't see one more sick person. I can't see, one more shooting, different things like that. And I wondered whether or not you've done any research about like the emotional effect that these type of things have on people in terms of like anxiety or depression or, fear, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you're kind of referring to partially is that, the Facebook feed is kind of, a medley of all kinds of things. It's just like personal posts and news and so forth. And actually, Facebook is, they have a lot of researchers and they work with researchers in the field, and they're kind of aware of all the negative research about the effects of Facebook on well-being. So they instituted a number of different features. So, for example, they've delegated sort of clickbait links and sort of fake news links, even though people tend to click on those more, so it's more money for Facebook. But they are now kind of prioritizing, personal posts. So when you open your Facebook feed, you might actually see more relevant things from your friends. And, I think people generally tend to post positive things about their lives on Facebook. But if somebody is going through a difficulty and posts about that on Facebook, especially if it's close other or a close friend or something like that, it could create an opportunity to actually respond to their post. And there is research actually that providing social support through Facebook could actually have beneficial effects on the person that posted the negative post. But I think part of the issue here again is when you're using Facebook, right? So if you're just like, oh, I have like 2 minutes now, so I'm just going to scroll through my feed, and then you don't actually have the time to respond. You're just like seeing, oh, a friend is, I don't know, just got diagnosed with cancer or something. Well, in that case, you're sort of negatively affected by the news, but you don't have the normal opportunity to actually, reach out right away, and so that could actually be negative. So,
All right. Well, Dr. Kushlev, we certainly want to thank you for your time, family. We've been speaking to the assistant professor in the Department of Psychology at Georgetown University, Dr. Kushlev. Thanks for the conversation. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.